This is Visual Studio Code running our extension for example-based live programming. In the background, it communicates through the LSP with our GraalVM language server. Note that this is the latest version of our extension with a couple of new features that I now like to show you in action. Let's start with defining an example. We call the example 10 and we set n to 10. We can now see that the return value is undefined because the function doesn't return anything yet. I can also see that by adding a probe. So let's start implementing the algorithm. We set x to 0 and y to 1 and we return x. Now we can see that this function returns 0 for our given example. Of course, the 10th number in the Fibonacci sequence is not 0, it's 55. We can assert that by turning our probe into an assertion. Now the assertion is failing because we haven't fully implemented the algorithm yet. So let's do that. We repeat n times. We set z to x. We set x to y. And we set y to z plus y. Now the algorithm is complete. The assertion is true. And we can see the return value on the top. I can also add another example. Let's call it 20 and set n to 20. And we can see the return value for that as well. You also notice that we are encoding example names with emojis. So this rocket corresponds to this rocket and corresponds to our example with the name 10. While this other example 20 returns 6765, which is not 55, which is why the assertion is no longer true. Of course, we can make this assertion example specific and now it's true again. Another thing that we can do is select code and turn it into a probe as well. Now I've only selected Z, so we can see all values for Z for each iteration and for each example. I can move my mouse even further and now the expression is invalid, which we can see, and I can turn it into a valid expression again, and now we basically get to see the Y values. Moreover, I can click on this little bug, which will put me into a debugger session for the corresponding example, and now I can step through the code. Lastly, this tool also works for other languages as well. So here you can see the same implementation in Ruby, and the tool works in exactly the same way.